Hey guys, Chad and Sebastian here with Reptile Rangers, and we're at the Kernersville Reptile Zoo and Medical Center today, and we are going to talk about feeders for reptiles. Now, this does not include bugs, okay? This is not any of the insectivorous feeders. This is all whole prey feeders. There's a lot of different types of feeders that people feed to their snakes, to their lizards, even to their turtles, like soft shell snapping turtles, things like that, alligator snappers, even to some of your pond turtles, things of that nature. Now, primarily, of course, we're talking snakes and lizards such as tegus and monitors are the big ones. Now, with that being said, here's the thing. A lot of people will buy and sell mice, especially your big chain stores. Mice are absolute trash food. There's absolutely nothing to these things. They're all tendons and bones. They're absolutely useless as feeders. When we have somebody come into the zoo and they've been feeding mice for X amount of time, the first thing we do is we get them over to the rat, okay? Yes, there is a size difference in these two, okay? But they come smaller and they come bigger, okay? As soon as we get them over to the rats, the growth rate tends to amplify, and then shed cycles become quite a bit more frequent, and even the thickness of the animal start to become quite a bit better because these are healthier. Okay, now going right into it, mice is the lowest nutritional feeder that's out there. Rats would be the next one up. They're a good nutritional feeder, work really well. We have a whole breeding facility, and we breed these things ourselves for not only our zoo but for our customers as well. Now, another several that we have here is like a chick, rabbit. You can do rabbit feeders. Rabbits are really, really good. Some of the ones that we don't have here are things like gerbils and hamsters, guinea pigs. Guinea pigs are really, really high in fat. They make a really good feeder, but of course with a guinea pig you have to be very careful about how often you feed a guinea pig. Sebastian, what's the deal with kind of with gerbils and hamsters? I mean, they're a good feeder, but what's the downside to feeding gerbils and hamsters?
Most of the time when you start feeding a gerbil or a hamster, you better have a ready stock of them because your snake's not going to get off of it. I mean, it's like crack to a freaking snake. Once they have it, they don't want to get off of it. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's like African softfurs. Ball pythons, that would actually be natural food for the ball pythons is the African softfurs. So a lot of times for your trouble ball python feeders, and other people will tell somebody, try doing the ASFs or the African softfurs. And he's right. Now, it doesn't mean that the gerbils and hamsters, the snake, or especially the snake, is impossible to get them back over to things like rats or chicks or rabbits or whatever the case may be. It just means it's going to be quite a bit harder. So if you don't have to start with gerbils and hamsters, or you don't have a ready supply of them, I wouldn't suggest starting them on the gerbils and the hamsters because they can be very difficult to get back off of those. Rats is the easiest thing. They're usually readily available somewhere. Somebody has them. They're the healthiest of the bunch. That's the easiest to get. That's the cheapest, okay? Doesn't mean it's the healthiest thing out there. It's not. Rabbits are better. Chicks are okay. Gerbils and hamsters are actually better. But again, we just had that conversation about gerbils and hamsters. African softfurs do come better. Now, one of the catches to the African softfurs versus the mice, they're similar in size, including their babies. Things like king snakes and corn snakes and milk snakes, a lot of the babies in those physically cannot take down a rat pinky. So you have two options. You can either give a mouse pinky, or you can do what's called halving or even quartering a rat. Some people do what's called braining for your really insanely small species that they may have a very difficult time with even getting a quarter of the animal in the case of like eyelash vipers. Eyelash vipers, a lot of people will just brain something and just essentially give them the brains of the feeder and let them take that, or maybe the leg. It's a rat leg or a mouse leg or whatever. Now again, we're not saying that mice are completely useless. We're just saying they're not nutritional and they're a waste of money. Essentially, for anything that's big enough to take a rat pinky, especially get a rat pinky, real quick, a rat pinky and a rat fuzzy. While Sebastian's going to get a rat pinky and a rat fuzzy for me, since we didn't grab those, but if it can take a rat pinky, then you should be on rats, especially. Now, once it gets to about this size, rabbit pinkies are a little bit smaller. They're about that tall, okay, and about that big around. and they do come a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger. Rat pinkies are absolutely fantastic, but again, it's kind of like one of those things. Make sure that you have a ready supply of those, because if you don't want to get an animal used to something that you cannot get in ready supply. But again, the main thing that we try and do is, if it's at all possible, absolutely no mice, for sure. No mice. Again, they're just not nutritional. Doesn't matter what the species is, unless they physically cannot take a rat pinky or won't take a rat pinky that's even quarter or brained or something else. And what they start off with is mice, then that's fine. Start them off with mice, but as soon as they're physically capable of taking something this size, okay, or a rat fuzzy, they need to be on these. All right. Now the chicks are really good for, a lot of people like them for their baby or young reticulated pythons, Burmese pythons, African rock pythons, decent sized boa constrictors. They like them for their monitors. They like them for other such stuff. Okay, chicks are not bad. I mean, chicken is a good, healthy meat. The only downside that comes with this is, of course, the fur and feathers. Because with this little guy, it's more fur. It's not feathers yet. Of course, they have the beaks and the feet. There's a few things that as the chicks get bigger, or the chickens, once you get up to chickens, they don't always fully process the feathers. So just added bowel complications of a potential. But there's nothing wrong with doing the chicks, for sure. Rabbits, for a lot of our large constrictors, I mean, we do things like rabbits all the way up to New Zealanders, 10 to 14 pounders, baby goats, baby pigs is another feeder. But again, let's talk about that. When it comes to nutritional content, that's where it comes into the fact of a healthy snake versus an unhealthy snake, whether by malnourishment, or an unhealthy snake, whether by overfeeding, okay? So guinea pigs are really high in fat, and of course pork, true pigs, are insanely high in fat. They work really well, but they don't need to be fed all that often. Again, each species is going to be different. A reticulated python is going to process their food a little bit faster than what a Burmese is. Reticulateds are a little bit more high-paced and high-strung. An anaconda is not going to process their food quite as big, because they're a very large, lazy snake. Unlike the reticulated, again, reticulateds are a little bit more mobile until anywhere from about 14 to 16 feet, when they start finally getting some girthy size to them, and then they don't move as much. But again, they're a little bit more of a fast-paced snake when they're younger. So they can burn the fat faster than what a Burmese python would burn fat. A boa constrictor versus a ball python. A boa constrictor is probably going to burn a little bit more fat than what a ball python is. They're pet rocks, okay, so they do absolutely nothing. So again, know your species: colubrids, king snakes, corn snakes, milk snakes, bull snakes, gophers, whiptails, indigos, pines. All those guys are going to be really high-strung, really fast-paced snakes, so they can handle more feedings versus your pythons. Some of your larger pythons, they don't need as often as those feedings, unless there's somebody's power feeding for just some reason, for breeding or for whatever the case may be, quick growing. And power feeding is not always a good route to go either, other than in just a few situations and only for a short period of time. But with feeders, again, it comes down to, most of the time, it comes down to personal preference and also availability, where rats may be available in some areas, chicks may be more available, or, again, gerbils, hamsters, African soft furs may be more available in another area. Mice is pretty well available at a lot of places, but again, mice is just absolute trash. It's like crickets. We take and throw the crickets. Crickets we try not to use, and we try not to promote using them. Mice we don't use, and we try not to promote using them, because they're just not that nutritional. Animals tend to stay hungry or more, and they tend to be a little bit more aggressive. And if you're doing live mice are more known to predate and prey on snakes versus your rats. These guys are known to chew the snakes to pieces. Where the rats, I haven't seen as many rats do it quite as often. They tend to be more of the kind to stay away from those animals. And also understand, when it comes to your monitor species, the temperature is going to be key. And with monitors and tegus, they have a high obesity rating as it is. And also, especially with tegus, they're really, really bad for prolapsing. With us being a medical center, you can see the episode on prolapsing, way back down in the list in the videos. But they're really notorious for having prolapses. And a lot of the times it's due to a lot of undigested food, where they're fed too much and it's not warm enough, they're not able to break that food down fast enough, okay? So this is feeders. All the different types of feeders that we can utilize, the good ones, the bad ones, the ones that you should stay away from, the ones that are good, but maybe you just want to tend to avoid, even though they're a good one, because they may be harder to get, and then the ones that are just readily available everywhere and the goods about them. Now, there is no really good set schedule. You can feed every 7 days, every 14 days, every 21 days, every 30 days, even as much as every 45 days, depending on what you're feeding. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about one species or another as far as the specifics of how often you should feed them. If you have a certain species and you're not sure, get in touch with us. In the information below, in the description below, we have all of the zoo and medical center's information, including the phone number. The phone number can also accept text messages. You have a certain species that you're wanting to know, what can it take, how often should I feed it, or what should I be feeding it? Feel free to call us or text us, we'll happily help you out there. Now, again, this is feeders for reptiles, the whole prey items, not insects, but whole prey feeders for reptiles, snakes, lizards, and a few turtle species. This is Chad and Sebastian, and make sure to subscribe, like, hit the bell button. Make sure to write us in if you have any questions. Again, YouTube does not notify us of our comments, so when somebody comments, we don't always know about it. We get to those comments as fast as possible so that we can make sure we respond in kind for your interest in leaving us a comment. Okay, if you have a question that needs our immediate concern, or that you need answered immediately, go ahead and get with us in the number and the information below. That way we can help you, whether medically or otherwise. But again, this is Chad and Sebastian. We are the Kernersville Reptile Zoo and Medical Center, the Reptile Rangers. We look forward to seeing you again and again, and thank you for following along week after week. And we'll either see you here at the zoo, or we'll see you on the next episode. Later.